All right. Well, as to not waste time here tonight, I think we should go ahead and get started, seeing as we have almost 60 people in the call. So thanks everybody for joining in on time. But welcome everybody to tonight's Jumpstart Germantown JUMPinar, and this is our weekly, or excuse me, bi-weekly webinar series that we host here on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Covering a variety of topics in the world of real estate development, and kind of it's our place to do deep dives on special topics that we aren't able to cover during our official training program. And tonight's topic is especially important for Jumpstart graduates, and really anybody who's entering the world of real estate development and working with people that are more experienced than them, or falling into a mentor relationship. This is going to be our session titled "How to Use Your Mentor." If you're a graduate of the program, you know that when you finish up or excuse me, if you're a past graduate or hoping to take the Jumpstart program, you should know that you'll have the opportunity to be paired with a mentor, and Jumpstart has a great network of mentors that we match up with people after they graduate, and they kind of serve as your first point of guidance for questions on your projects, and look to kind of help you step into those first couple deals where it's not great to be alone without any resources. And tonight we're going to talk about how to take advantage of that relationship and really how to benefit the most from it. And we're going to do that by speaking with one of our most experienced and most loved mentors, Brendan Kelly, who we've paired a lot of people with through the years of the program. And he's been working with Jumpstart and is a friend of Ken for a long time. So I'm happy he's here to join us tonight, and I'll introduce him in just a second. But before I do that, just want to remind everybody that we're going to have a live Q&A session at the end of tonight's discussion. So in about half an hour or probably 45 minutes, we'll switch over to answering your questions, which you'll submit by using the Q&A tab, which is on the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. So as we're talking, you can go ahead and type those in there, and they'll kind of save up until the end, and then we'll spend some dedicated time answering your questions. And that's the first bit of housekeeping. Then the second is there's going to be a section of the mentor application that you'll be completing to apply for a mentor, which will have some questions directly related to our discussion here tonight. And hopefully our goal here is to prepare you to answer those questions and provide some quality responses as part of that mentor application. You'll see that when we send it out tomorrow or very shortly. So yeah, that's about all I got to say at the moment. I'll quickly just introduce our guest, Brendan Kelly. Like I said, he is an experienced mentor with Jumpstart and a wealth of knowledge in real estate development and investing. And a lot of people have found benefit being mentored or being paired with him as a mentor. And hopefully you'll get a little bit of that knowledge and expertise shared tonight when we're talking about how to relate with mentors and how to use them as a resource in your growth as a developer. So I'll let him introduce himself. And thanks again, Brendan, so much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you. I hope I can live up to that introduction. I've enjoyed working with Jumpstart, as you said, for a very long time. I got started in this business. I think, like many people probably on this call, I started it as a side hustle. I had a corporate finance job for a long time, and maybe not quite 20 years ago, but maybe 17 or 18 years ago, I just decided to buy a rental house. I had a young daughter, and I thought, well, if I buy a rental house and I get it paid off while she's a child, then it'll be enough to pay for her college. And then I had another daughter, so I had to buy another house, and kind of one thing led to another. And they're freshmen and sophomores in college right now, and the plan worked. In that, the money I could have made off of those two houses would be enough to send those two kids to college. Maybe not cover the room and board, but certainly the tuition. And so that was kind of the plan. And then I just loved it, and I just kind of, my little side hustle was a little hobby that got way out of control. And then I started doing this full time, maybe 10 or 11 years ago. And then somewhere along the line, 7 or 8 years ago, got hooked up with Jumpstart, and I've really enjoyed the process. And I have had a broad range of experiences with different people I've worked with as mentees.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. What are some of the people? What have some of the people you've worked with done? And sort of how do you approach the whole mentorship process with Jumpstart graduates?
Yeah. So for me, I tend to try to have just an initial conversation and try to assess a few things. One, whether people are really ready to make that that next step. And I certainly don't want to discourage anybody on this call. That I would say that there are certain things that I see that people like will need to have in order um, to have a successful experience. And and sometimes the mentoring can even be, if you're not ready, I could still help mentor somebody in the things they would need to do in order to be ready.
Mhm.
So I have sort of a checklist of things that I think people will need if they're going to be successful in this world. And so for example, you're going to need to have decent credit. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you need to have some credit, because if you get a jumpstart loan at the back end, you're going to want to refinance it, and you'll need banks presumably to be willing to do that. And so that's something that you will need. It doesn't mean that you need to have an 800 credit score, but if you've got a 500 credit score, then even as the mentor, I might be able to help you figure out how you're going to get from here to there. But you can't, necessarily get your 500 credit score to a 650 or 680, in a month. It might take you a year, but still, that's something that I could help somebody assess kind of where they are in that, and then if they're not where they need to be, um, sometimes the answer can be counterintuitive, about like, what are the things that will make my credit score increase. And so, in that particular case, that's just one example, but
Yeah, so
that,
it sounds like the first step is finding out if this person's prepared for the mentorship, right? And kind of like identifying some characteristics of that person about whether they're ready or not. So like what would you say are some, in addition to like a credit score, what are some things that you'd feel people should evaluate in themselves to know if they're prepared or not?
yeah, I would say at least some access to capital. And so, Jumpstart obviously is providing financing, which is great, but you can't come in with zero cash. You'll need to have some, even if it's just access through a credit card balance you have, or a willingness to get a hard money loan, or taking a second loan against your personal home, those types of things. Um, One thing I find that holds some mentees back, and it's hard for me to really gauge who's going to be good at this and who's going to not be good at it. But one thing about this business is that you look and you look and you look and you're searching for the right deal. I've seen a decent number of people who have found what I think is the right deal, and then they don't really have a willingness to take the risk. And part of this business is that there is risk involved. If you buy 30 houses over the next 10 years, you're gonna have a couple of bad experiences along the way. And hopefully you'll have more good experiences than bad experiences, and that will make the thing in total be successful. But I see a lot of people trying to eliminate all risk, and you can't eliminate all risk. And so I think people need to kind of think through that. At the same time, you don't want to be cavalier and take all risks. I mean, you've got to find the proper balance, and so you need to be responsible about it. You need to understand that, like, there's just you can't predict the future entirely, and so your model needs to include some level of leeway, that there's a downside. What if something goes wrong? What if I get delayed by a month? What if these different things might happen? So there's a willingness to actually follow through when you get to the moment where you found the right deal. And that right deal never shows up with a big bow around it saying, hey, this is the right deal. You'll never quite know. It's easier to assess in hindsight. A year later, you're like, oh, that was a great deal, I guess. But at the time, it wasn't quite as clear.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
Another one that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. So yeah,
No,
can yeah.
I said another one that many people have experienced is that for anybody that's in a relationship, having the other person in the relationship be supportive of what you're trying to do here, because it is like taking on a second job. And so you've got the time commitment that goes with it. Like I said, there's an aspect of risk that goes with it. And I think that could be a strain on some types of relationships. And so again, I'm not a counselor, so it's just as a mentor, I just say like, oh well, if you've got a spouse, are they on board, or are you both seeing this the same way? Um,
Yeah. So let me ask: if somebody does have some of those characteristics, like they might have poor credit, or a relationship where they're not going to have, or a relationship or a job where they're not going to have the flexibility to dedicate time to their full job in real estate development, Um, do you think those people should not apply for a mentorship and kind of reevaluate their situation and then move forward? Or do you think it's worth for them to get paired up and then have that first call be about how to fix your credit and how to navigate a relationship while doing this? What do you think
Yeah,
about that?
no, I think that each person needs to make their own decisions, but I definitely wouldn't want to discourage people from pursuing the mentor relationship because so for example on the credit side, not that I'm a credit repair specialist, but I certainly know there are people running scams in that industry. There are also people that are pretty effective, and so I could refer somebody to someone who might be able to help with that. Sometimes you think, well, there's some of these like just in that example, it might seem that getting rid of a credit card would be a way to improve your credit score, but it's possible that the opposite would be the case. Maybe you're better off with a new credit card. Now you've got additional credit, and the debt that you have on your first credit card is smaller as a percentage of the total. And so sometimes things like that are counterintuitive,
Mhm.
and that's not my specialty, but certainly if somebody had that as an obstacle,
Mhm.
uh, I'd have some pointers for them, and I could probably point them to an organization that would be able to give them some truly expert advice on it. And
Mhm.
so to answer your question, I think people, if they believe that they have the willingness, like if they really do want to do this, then they should go ahead and take the mentor relationship, I think.
Good. And so let's kind of shift gears and talk about maybe an applicant or a graduate who is extremely prepared, right, and has an excellent credit and an access to either a line of credit or a home equity line of credit, or it maybe already has a property under agreement or something they inherited, and they're really ready to go. How can they even more so prepare themselves for that meeting with the mentor? Should they just step in and say, "Here's what I've got. Tell me what to do," or is there something that they can do to kind of line their ducks up so that when that first meeting does happen, it goes smoothly?
Yeah, there are several things, and I love the question because I've struggled with it some over the years. My sense is that many people who come to this program have never had a mentor before, and so learning how to interact with that person is not intuitive. And I would say that as the mentor, it's not that I don't want to interact with you, but I really want the mentee to be the one to take the initiative. And so, like a good example, I believe Angie typically sends the emails that say, "Hey, we've paired, this
Mm-hmm.
person with Brendan," and so she's copying both of us. And I would say probably 50% of the time, I'm the first one who like I'll wait several days to see if they reach out to me, and frequently they don't. And so then I will reach out to make that initial contact. But in that relationship, I would have expected the person who was going to be the mentee to instantly bounce the email, not instantly, but within the first day, bounce the email back and say, "Hey, thanks for taking the time. How can we get together?" And one of my takes on that is that if you don't have, if you're too shy to take the initiative to reach out to your mentor,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably too shy to be a real estate developer. And I say that as a person who's fairly shy in life, but you know, I really would like to see the mentee take the initiative at the start. And part of that is because when I look at the mentees that I've had over the years that have turned out to be the most successful ones in this program, they've needed varying levels of support. And so, some of them want support from the very first step all the way through until they've had it refinanced and they're buying their second one and they're working their way through. Others, like you said, maybe they've already inherited something and they already have the property. They don't need help with that. But they do need help with finding contractors, or they do need help with knowing how to finance it on the background. And so they need very specific things. And for me as the mentor, I'm excited. I'm happy to jump in and help you with each of those phases that you find as your need. But I really need for you to help guide that relationship so that I know what it is that you need.
Right.
The first step is, I believe, making first contact and just trying to schedule something.
Yeah, and so what, as also as part of that mentor application that graduates have to fill out, there's going to be a mentor or mentee eligibility and requirements, or excuse me, expectations and requirements document, which kind of says like some common sense stuff, right? Like your mentor is not your personal trainer who's going to be working with you 9 to 5 every day or anything like that. And it's that you guys are volunteering your time, right? So there's a certain sort of preset of the relationship where it's like if you want to make something out of it, the mentee has to be the one initiating the contact and sort of showing that they want to use that person as a resource, right?
That's correct. And I would say the vast majority of people who I know that have been successful over the years with this, myself included, started out by finding a mentor. Like, I'm still friends with my mentor from 20 years ago who taught me basically, how to not get my butt kicked in the real estate business. And we still stay in touch now. And so that relationship to me is very important. I'm happy to spend the time. I'm not sure if so.
Yeah.
Um,
Great. So let's talk a little bit more about that first meeting and sort of moving on after that. I do know that based on like feedback we've gotten from the mentorship program and from mentees about their mentorship, a lot of it have said that the mentorship never really goes beyond that first meeting, and sometimes people will have an initial call and get action items, and then it kind of falls apart after that, or maybe no action items were created, and then they come back to Jumpstart and say, my mentorship didn't work out for X, Y, Z reason. What are some ways that people can ensure that stepping out of that first meeting, they're going to be able to have a healthy relationship with that mentor? I know it's hard to say based on your own experience, because I'm sure try hard to like make that relationship last a little bit longer. But for a mentee who's paired with someone random who they might not have seen on a Zoom for an hour, it might be hard to relate with that person. So, what advice do you have for people?
well, certainly you want to make sure at the start, and I think that between yourself and Angie, Jumpstart does a pretty good job of pairing the people's interests with the mentors. And so
Mhm.
so my example, or my experience, I'm a landlord, and I just love the business of being a landlord. But if you're somebody who really wants to flip houses, I'm probably the wrong person to line you up with. Or if you want to go into new construction, that's not my expertise. And so, making sure that the skills and the interests are aligned.
Mhm.
Um, I also think, I think that through Jumpstart, people have learned, what the various phases are, right? So you need to, whether you have 5 or 20 phases, there's various things you need to do. You need to identify a property, you
Mhm.
need to build a pro forma to make sure that it's going to be successful, or at least to try to assure that it'll be successful. Um, you need to get through the whole settlement process and do all of that. So there's all these various phases.
Mhm.
And as the mentor, going into it, my first question usually is like, well, what are the blind spots for this particular person? Do they have experience with one aspect but not others? Some people might come and say, well, my spouse is a real estate agent, or my brother's a contractor. They might have certain things that they've already got lined up, but then there's other places where they don't. And so I think for the mentee to come to that first meeting with a pretty clear view of,
Mhm.
I feel reasonably confident in these areas. And what I hear a lot, and I can see why. People will say their biggest obstacles will be sourcing the property. Like, where would I find the actual thing that's going to be successful? And then the second the most common one is, who are the contractors that could work on it. And so if your shortcoming was going to be one of those items,
Mhm.
we hear that all the time. And so I might not have the perfect solution, but I've certainly got some ways
Right.
to guide you.
Yeah, and like you said, we do try and kind of match people up based on their answers in the application about, I want to do buy and holds only, or I want to do, new construction multifamily only, or something like that. And a lot of our mentors, such as yourself, have experience in a broad range of real estate development. So, we might pair you with someone who doesn't necessarily know, about one thing specifically, and you need to tell them what you want to know about, right? So like I really like your take on that. That it's important to, I think it's important for people to share with their mentor what interests them and what they need help with, as opposed to expecting them to know and sort of take over it for them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, so I kind of wanted to also talk a little bit more about what you were saying in financial readiness, and sort of how people can evaluate whether they're going to be able to have that access to capital, or a line of credit or something. Um, like, do you think that after that first meeting that they should continue the sorry, let me rephrase my question a little bit. I was just going to ask, so in terms of like preparing yourself with credit and capital, do you think that they should be waiting for their mentor to reach back out, or do you think that they should continue to say, in 2 weeks, check in and say, hey, I'm still working on this, or do you think they should just kind of let it sit undiscussed?
If I had a mentee call me tomorrow that I hadn't talked to in 4 years, I'd be
Mhm.
happy to help them however I could. Um, but the mentee needs to reach out. Like, I'm not going to chase down each person that I've worked with over the years. Not that I don't want to spend time with them. It's just that different people kind of hit a stride at different paces, and so um, there's one or these two guys that I mentored one of them, and he became business partners with another Jumpstart graduate, and they occupied a good amount of my time for a 3 month window. And by the end of the 3 months, they had bought their second property, and now they're just crushing it. They're just so they don't need for me to be on the phone every month to keep them going, because they figured it out. They got through the cycle one or two times. And so I might every 6 months or a year, or maybe not even that, I'll get a phone call about something that's really unusual. Like, hey, we got a squirrel in the house and I don't know who to call. Like, who would fix a problem like that?
Mhm.
And so, I think over time, what happens is people morph from needing a mentor to just needing a network of friends in this business. And so,
Right.
at first you need someone to walk you through all these different stages and try to help you do it, for, um, uh, the first couple times. But when you get through that and you've done it 4 or 5 times, now what you really need is a network, and you need people to say, hey, I need someone to do siding work, and I've never done siding work on one of these houses. Who could do that? And do you know anybody? And so it turns into something more like that. And so from the mentor side, I really need each mentee, and I try to tell people this, and sometimes I think they don't believe me, but I really do mean it, that you need to set up the meetings, that whether that's in person or just a quick phone call,
Mhm.
at the pace that you need. And so and it's okay if you need, if you want to have a conversation every 2 weeks, as long as you or even every week, if as you're getting started, if you want me to go visit a house with you and tell you what I think, I'm happy to do all those things.
Yeah. So
I'm not going to call you and say, hey, would you like to go see a house on Saturday?
right. Yeah.
Right.
Right. So I don't want to ask you about like getting into properties and actually taking people out to see, developments and everything. Is that something you'd have been able to do with your mentor or mentees? And I know that's something people really wish they had more of in the training program, right? Is seeing what's happening behind the walls and inside of these projects. How can people kind of use their mentor as a resource to get that sort of experience?
Well, certainly, I know your mentor doesn't want to be your real estate agent, right? So there's a piece where it's like, I'm not going to drive you around on Saturday to go look at 10 houses. But I think it's true of many of us, like, at any given time, I've probably got, 8 or 10 places we could go look at that are just things I have. Like, either it's a house that went vacant, so we've got a vacancy. Here's one that's complete. Here's, what we turned it into and why, here are the amenities we added or whatever. And then I'll have something that's a shell, and here's how we're going to get started. So I could take them on a tour of just things I have in the works. So that's one option. And I think a lot of the mentors would have a similar situation. Another common thing is somebody will say, hey, I've been out looking and I found this house and I really think it might be great. Do you mind taking a walk through it with me? And I love that. And in the end, Jumpstart's going to do it as well, because Jumpstart's going to come through. When they're looking at, assuming you get Jumpstart financing, someone's going to come through and want to assess, whether your budget is accurate or not. And so I think one of my standards of what make people successful in this business is just the love of real estate in itself. And I love that. And so if someone calls me and says, "Hey, do you want to look at a house with me?" Like, that's not a hardship. That's something I enjoy doing. I just don't want to be the one to go select it. I'm happy to, spend an hour on the phone telling you how I would go about selecting it. And if you select, one or two and you want to go take a look at them and we take a look at them and I think you did a bad job, I'll be polite about it, but I would tell you, hey, I think what you're missing on here is that, so like sometimes you'll see someone will get a great deal. You get there though, and it's got, noticeable structural issues. Structural issues, well, that's not the place to start if you're trying to find your first deal and make sure that it's successful. And so I think you should keep looking.
Yeah.
Um,
And how about like after, walking through the house, maybe if your mentor, finds a property, gets it under agreement, and you walk through it with them, how can they kind of utilize them in the loan application process? I know you don't just want people texting you saying, here's the purchase price, the construction budget, and the sales price, is this a good deal? Do you kind of want to work hands-on and look at that pro forma with people?
Are you talking about the pro forma for Jumpstart or the pro forma
Yeah,
for?
for both, I guess, a pro
Yeah,
forma, maybe if they're using another lender, or for their own, purposes, or jump starts. Yeah.
yeah, certainly. And that's kind of my background. I mean, I came out of a corporate finance, world. So, putting together pro formas like that is a comfortable thing for me. And if you were going to submit a pro forma to Jumpstart, um, I would want you, if you were my mentee, I would want you to walk through it with me so that we could, decide together, whether your budget was accurate. I mean, like an example, one of the most common things we'll see is that someone will come up with a budget and it's $30,000, and my first reaction will be, well, what are the odds it comes in at 29,000? And the odds of that are basically zero because the list includes everything that you need. Well, what are the odds that it comes in at 50,000? Well, maybe that's unlikely too, but it's more likely because the odds that you have an extra month of interest because the project gets delayed, or you've got various things will pop up. And so trying to make sure that people are being realistic about what their budget should be, and that it's got enough cushion in it that something could go wrong. And so that
And
aspect of it is absolutely where a mentor should be involved, because nobody in this process wants to see anybody get into it. I'd rather see you be disappointed that your deal didn't work out than get hurt if your deal goes sideways once you get into it.
Sure. Yeah. I like that you kind of frame mentorship as like a first pass of the loan application review. It's like having somebody kind of analyze the deal from the perspective, like a third party perspective, right? Somebody who's not financially involved, or is looking to do it themselves, but has experience and can give you feedback and constructive criticism about it, right? And not risk being denied your loan, or being losing an application fee or something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Great.
so pretty frequently we'll see someone put together a pro forma and it'll say, it's a 3-bedroom house and I need $15,000 for a new heating and air system. I'm like, no, 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 you're talking to the wrong person. Like,
Right.
that's the wrong budget. It's probably closer to 7 or 8,000. Or the exact opposite happens. We're going to rewire the house and that'll cost $3,000. Like, no, like you're nowhere close to what it will actually cost. And so just at first blush, a lot of things you can fine tune. And so that's something that as a mentor, I'm happy to do that. And I've been through it hundreds of times. I can't make it perfect. In the end, it depends how well people operate. And at some point, people are going to need to hire the heating and air person and hire the electrician and kind of get through the process. But even in those areas, if someone was giving you a quote for $15,000, I'm like, well, maybe you should call this guy and he'll give you a more reasonable,
Yeah.
more reasonable price.
Yeah, and it's certainly not like the mentors, are expected to have a list of contractors to use, or a list of realtors to use, or a list of properties even to go after. It's more so they're teaching you how to do it yourself, right? And teaching you how to kind of come to those conclusions, and doing it in sort of a learning environment instead of a risk one, right?
Yeah, but it's also not some riddle where I know the answer and I don't want to share it. Like,
Right.
I
Right.
feel like I have the magic ticket, and I'm
Mhm.
willing to share it with the people who reach out and ask. And I think if you had 3 different mentors in the room and you ask a question like, should I put a dishwasher in a house? I
Mhm.
would say absolutely, and someone else would say that's stupid. You shouldn't do that. Different people are going to have different opinions about, whether you should do one thing or another. And so it doesn't mean that when I say I've got the magic ticket, I mean, I've got the magic ticket that worked for me. As I was talking about the two guys who became business partners through Jumpstart. Some of the things that they do, including having business partners, which I discourage people from doing, they're doing things that wouldn't necessarily be what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
They found the process that works for them. They're doing really, really well with it. And so we'll all, kind of, morph. I don't expect my mentees to, run their businesses exactly the way that I run mine. Everyone's going to kind of develop their own comfort level and the things that work for them.
Right. And so we've talked a lot about the ways that or the things that you should ask your mentees and the ways that mentees can help. What do you think are some things that people should kind of leave out of their mentorship relationship? Is there anything that isn't going to be solved through that?
I mean, we're not social workers, and so there are some things where I can't decide whether I should quit my job or not. I really want to do this, at some point, and even to the point where I have a house that I own now where somebody from Jumpstart presented it to me and asked me whether he should buy it. I'm like, I really don't think, you have to make your own decision, but it sure seems like a really good deal.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, he came back and he said that his wife wasn't comfortable with it, which was fair. His wife wasn't comfortable with it. So I was like, well, if you're not going to buy it, you mind if I do? And so I did buy it. And then he came back and he said, boy, I really regret. I wish I bought that. I'm like, I'll sell it back to you for what I paid for it. And he still didn't buy it. And so part of that is that you need to be kind of willing to make that to pull the trigger when you see the right deal.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I can't, as the mentors, like I can't help you through your angst of
Right.
the risk. If you want to make extra money, you could become a bartender. They make good money too. And so that's another way to make some cash on the side. You have to really know that you want to do this, and it doesn't have to be terribly risky. If you look at, you go find what you would describe as like a grandma house, and you paint it and put it back together, and make it nice and rent it.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't have to be a terribly risky thing to do, but it's not without risk. There's some level of risk. You don't know if you'll get it rented on January 1st or March 1st or June
Mm-hmm.
1st, and so you can't really predict the outcome. And some people don't adapt well to that uncertainty. And
Mm-hmm.
as the mentor, I can give you some pointers of how I might be looking at it, and I could tell you what I think the chances are that it goes bad. But I'm not going to tell you that you should or you shouldn't buy the house.
Yeah. Great. And I just want to remind everybody that we're going to have a Q&A in like 10-ish minutes. I see Angie has answered some of the questions there, but feel free to keep typing those in and we can ask them to Brendan in a minute. But so I guess the next thing I want to ask you about, Brendan, is so Jumpstart tries our best to match people and align their interests and make them or make it work out based on what you're answering in the application and what we know about our mentors. But there's a chance that your mentorship might not work out, and that the two people might not be aligned or might have different work styles or something. What is a signal for somebody that they might want to either come back to Jumpstart and ask for a new mentor or step back from the relationship? Is there anything that are kind of like red flags that maybe this isn't going to be a good situation to be in?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I think that Jumpstart's done a very good job, especially in the last few years, of trying to make sure that people are, at least the people that come to me, are buy and hold people, so they've got long-term view of it. So certainly, and I guess it's possible that people would just feel like there wasn't a chemistry, like people weren't just kind of getting along with each other, and so. Certainly, I would say if you start talking to, like if I started talking to a mentor and they were saying, well, what I do is flip houses, and I would say, well, with my interest, I'm a buy and hold person, and so I don't think that these two businesses are run the same way, and so I certainly think, and especially in the buy and hold business, it's county specific, and so. I wouldn't, like, everything that I own is in Philadelphia County. I used to own one in Delaware County, and then I sold it. I kept it in, for better or worse, it's all in Philadelphia, which is better actually. But still, it's so things like that. Like if you think, well, my mentor is somewhat in my business, but they're doing it all in New Jersey, and it doesn't necessarily apply. And so, like in the buy and hold business, you want to make sure that you understand local. How do you get things through L&I? If you've got projects for that, what kind of licensing do I need? All of these types of things. That can be bureaucratic, and like in our case in Philadelphia, they're very simple to be compliant, but it's very serious if you're not compliant. So it doesn't take very much effort to make sure that you are, but you want to make sure that you are.
Mhm.
But if I was trying to mentor somebody in New Jersey, I'd be like, well, I don't know what they do in New Jersey. It's a different story. I can tell you it's important, but I don't know how to do it.
Mhm.
Whereas in Philadelphia we have it dialed in, and I know how. And as it changes, I can say, hey, this is something that's new this year, as the years go on. So I certainly think, making sure that what your mentor is actually doing and what their experience is aligns with what you want to do, because you wouldn't want to start buying, property in New Jersey with what you really wanted to do was stay
Yeah.
in Philadelphia.
Great. And then let's finish up by just kind of talking about the course of the mentorship and how long it takes, and when do people finally like finish up feeling the need to ask their mentor questions and have them look at deals with them. How long do your mentees usually work with you on deals? Is there a certain point where you're like, oh, this person is maybe not in need of me, or maybe even ready to mentor someone else, which is what Jumpstart loves.
Yeah. And there's speaking of which, I know that like Rakeem Miller, I think
Yeah.
had done some of your JUMPinars
Yep.
recently. He was one
Yep.
of those two that was business
Yep.
partners there.
We'll need to talk Raheem into being a mentor as well.
Yeah. So um, absolutely, you can see that happen. And I would say I guess there's a graduation from Jumpstart, but there's no graduation from mentorship. And so the person who got me started in this, like literally, I met him before there was no Jumpstart. It was close to 20 years ago, and I just like ran into him literally on the street, and he became my mentor, and we're still I would say friends at this point. Over the years, I don't really need to call him, but we always bouncing things off of each other. And hey, if there's a new law that came into effect or something like that, we're always in touch. And so some of those things can last for years. Um, in the case of others, I have one mentee that just bought a duplex just a month or two ago, and she's getting that up and running. She's going to live in part of it, and then her plan is to go off and buy additional rental houses. And so I think that's going to continue for a while, because the experience of buying a rental house will be different than buying her duplex. But she clearly has some expertise at this point. She knows a demo person. She knows a heating and air person. She knows an electrician. She has a sense of how to build that budget. So she's pretty far along. And just as an aside here, I would say people, you talk to people who have different size portfolios, and here's a person who's got 10 houses, and here's a person who's got 20, and here's a person who has 50. And I would say the thing that I find most impressive is when I find a person that's got 5, because if you can get from 0 to 5, you can just replicate it as many times as you want. And then you could have 50 or 100 or 1,000 if that's what you want to do. But the hardest part is to get from 0 to 5. And so, and maybe even just getting from 0 to 2 or 3. And once you get to that, you're like, oh, I figured this out. Now I've kind of got a stride, and I have banking relationships, and I just know how to do it. And so that's the part that, to me, that's impressive, because you've got to, have the initiative to get it done. And so to answer your question, these relationships could last for a month, and they could last for, multiple years. But there's no like moment like, okay, and now I'm going to stop being your mentor.
Right.
If I was your mentor 4 years ago and I haven't talked to you, and you call me tomorrow, how can I help? What can I do? And I do get those calls.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to help, but I still want and I don't think I'm alone among the mentors. I still want the mentee to be the one to reach out to me.
Great. All right. Well, I think that is pretty much everything I wanted to cover. Was there any kind of last, bits of advice or best practices you want to share for the mentorship? I know I think you're in the top 4 or 5 of number of mentees we've paired with people, so you've seen a lot of them. What do you have for this group of 92 people on the call who are going to be soon filling out the mentor application?
I guess people who are in this program already are excited about this business, but something that I point out to people that may not be intuitive. Commercial mortgages are typically 25 years rather than like your personal home is a 30-year mortgage. But I would say If you buy $1 million worth of real estate and you live for 25 years, you'll have $1 million. There's very few ways that most people can build, actual wealth. And if you look at your family, most families, as someone becomes the grandparent, their net worth is something pretty close to the value of the home they live in. And so homes are the way that people have built wealth over time. And something I love about this business, and I hope other people can come to love it as well, is that it can be as big as you want it to be, or as small as you want it to be. The guy who became my mentor, he has 20 houses, which is it's a big portfolio, but not that big relative to many of the people that are in this business. But he runs it with very low debt. He is just happy with the lifestyle he lives, and he lives a very nice lifestyle because he's got 20 houses with almost no debt, and he's got all of that income. Other people, myself included, I have a larger portfolio, but I manage it with a higher level of debt because I'm borrowing from one to buy the next, and so I'm not in such a rush to pay it down. But I love the way that people can start this on the side, turn it into a full-time job if they want to, and build it to the size that they find comfortable. And I just can't think of any other business that is so scalable. So I love the business. That's why you can tell my excitement about it. I love this business, and I'm excited when I see people that are interested in getting into it.
Great.
And there's also no competition in our business. With as many houses as I have, I could go to South Philly and take every house that I have and put it on 2 single blocks. And I think I have a pretty large portfolio, but relative to the city, it's minuscule. I'm not competing against other people to be in this business, and so I'm happy to show somebody else how to do it.
Right.
We have a lot of housing stock here that needs to be rebuilt, and so if more people are working at it, that's great.
Definitely. All right. Thank you so much, Brendan. That was excellent. I think we covered a lot of great information there. And we have some questions that were submitted, over the course of our conversation that we'll get to. And I want to let people know that they can ask more. Go ahead and type them into the Q&A, and we'll work through them in order here. The first one comes from Ricky, and he was asking you, Brendan, what if a mentee is considering both options of A, a renovation, or B, new construction? But they would like to learn more about them before deciding which to pursue first. Would he have to make up his mind by the time that they complete the mentorship application, or can they step into the mentor relationship, being on the fence and not knowing?
Yeah, I think that to some degree that's a question for Jumpstart, because I get to the person after they've already been assigned.
Yeah, so on our mentor application, you can click boxes for multiple types of development. So if you want to, click both renovation and new construction, we'll know that you're interested in both of those types. Or, you could choose one of those and leave out the other if you made your mind up prior to it. But a mentor, Brendan, would be able to help you kind of navigate maybe which is more appropriate for you based on either your finances or your interests or passions, right?
That's correct. And if somebody came to me with that, I would say, well, my expertise is over on this side.
Right.
I would tell you that if you buy $1 million worth of real estate and you live for 25 years, you'll have $1 million. If you're building houses and you're selling them, then at the end of every year, you made whatever you made, but you're not building as much equity in it, which may not be a bad thing. If you build 50 houses a year, you could make a fortune doing that. So I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do, but it's a different mentality, and clearly people have done extremely well in that business. And so I could help you walk through what some of the advantages and disadvantages would be of each of those things. But if you said, okay, well, now I've decided that I want to build new construction, I'd probably send you back to Jumpstart to try to be paired with somebody who has the relevant experience for that.
Yeah. And Michael is asking, does Jumpstart pair mentors by skill set or experience, or is it more about the mentees and what part of the real estate ventures they want to pursue, or first come, first serve deal? So we like we've been saying, we kind of review the application in full and then decide, based on which mentors we know are focusing on buy and holds or buy and sells or new construction. We match people up best we can on that. To answer your question, do we pair by skill set or experience? I would say that's something, I guess, to be discussed on that first call between the Jumpstart or between the Jumpstarter and the mentor. Like, we don't necessarily see somebody's not experienced and then pair them with a specific mentor. I think it's a little bit more about whether you're ready in general to be paired with a mentor or not. You know,
And people shouldn't be shy about what their shortcomings are. I mean, that's why they're getting a mentor, right? That's why they went through Jumpstart.
right,
Um, I had I had no idea how to do this when I bought my first house. I literally bought the house, and then I was like, I don't know what to do with it. I have this house. I started asking around. I knew that it couldn't be impossible to get it done, so and I did, but I made a bunch of mistakes that first time. But it was helpful to have my mentor, and so I expect people to come. That's why, or to come with,
mm-hmm.
with not shortcomings, but to come with needs. That's what we're here to try to do.
Yeah, and just to kind of clarify, the reason we're asking those questions on the application, like describe your real estate development experience, is we want to give you an opportunity to like share some information prior, so that your mentor can kind of see that and frame their initial meeting. It's more just about getting to know you, less about if I put down that I don't have any experience, they're going to pair me with a certain type of mentor. That's definitely what we expect is people are unexperienced. Um, so Lara is asking, how much capital should you have access to, as in what percentage of a project? Well, I can answer that for Jumpstart. You're required to have a 15% equity in the deal, so that's 15% of the total project cost. But that's not all the money you need. There's closing costs and holding costs and loan application fees or commitment fees. Brendan, what recommendations do you have for Lara in kind of determining how much capital she needs to have before going forward?
Um, you need to have a plan to have some, but I've had people come to me and say, well, look, I'm good with money. I've got these credit cards, and I've got $20,000 worth of access to credit there. I have zero balance on them, so there's money available. Credit card debt can be a pretty expensive way to borrow money. But if you need money initially, that may be a source. Or someone might say, well, I don't have any actual cash, but I have a lot of equity in my personal home. Maybe I could take another loan. And so certainly as the mentor, I can walk through what some of your options can be. And
Mhm.
some of those options can become increasingly risky. And so, you want to be very careful, especially in our current market where interest rates are rising. And so, somebody's going to figure out, this year how to make a fortune in real estate, but it's a little bit scarier right now than it was a year ago. But that is absolutely not a reason to avoid getting started, because you might get started and say, well, what I really need to do is improve my credit, and that might take a year. And I think a year from now, it's going to have a different landscape. And so there are things that you can do today to be prepared for when the environment is better. Hopefully 6 months or a year from now. And it just in the last 48 hours, I've seen a couple of decent deals come across that. So they're out there. I know they're out there. They're not as plentiful as they were a year ago, and I think we're in sort of a transitional moment. But if that's your or one of your major concerns, I think it's still worth having a mentor, because we can talk through, like, here are some options. You've got hard money lending on is an option, and that's in this market I would discourage people from going that way. The jumpstart loans are great, but like you just said, Derek, there's a certain amount that people need to be able to show. And so the smaller the deal, I guess the easier it is to show 15% of it, but there aren't that many, tiny deals out there these days.
Right. Okay, great. And the remaining questions we have. Oh, actually, one more just came from Andre. Since winter is here, is it a good idea to get a property to renovate and sell? Because I don't think as many people will buy during the winter. It's sort of a general question, but would you say that winter approaching has anything to do with when to invest?
Um, I think it's so hard to time that perfectly. And I've seen people try to time it just right, where they're gonna have something available to either rent or sell on June 1st, but then it gets delayed, and it turns out that June 1st becomes September 1st, and now they're at the exact other end uh, of the seasons, and they're heading into the winter, and it's the worst time to be holding it. And I would say that I would I would take the opportunities when the opportunities arise, and people are buying and selling houses, and people are renting houses in every market. I mean, with that said, would I rather be trying to rent a place on April 1st than today? I mean, I've got, a couple of places that haven't rented, and I'm kind of surprised they haven't in the last 30 days. And so they're clearly moving slow, more slowly than they would have in the springtime. Um, but it might be the difference of renting it for $1,300 instead of $1,350. But if the deal was right, a lot of us have. I always think of it in terms of capacity. Right now the market is declining. Should I stop working? Well, no, I have capacity, and so I just want to choose my deals carefully. But I want to keep working because if I buy $1 million worth of real estate and I live for 25 years, I'll have $1 million. And so I want to keep putting things into the funnel if that's what my objective is. And I want to be very careful not to get burned. And so I want to make sure that the data that I put into my pro forma is realistic. If I say I'm going to rent this place for 1,700 and then I end up getting 1,300, I'm going to be in trouble. And so I need to be cautious about the data I use. But I wouldn't worry too much about seasonality. It just seems that it's too hard to predict. And even if you were looking to flip a house, somebody who is putting a house on the market today, the landscape is dramatically different than it was when they got started 6 months ago. That's unfortunate at this particular moment. And to be honest, I think that highlights some of the risk of flipping houses, is that whatever outcome you have is laid bare at the end of the transaction. Whereas if you're in the rental business, you get to the end, you thought you'd be able to refinance and get all your money back, but instead things changed a little bit. And instead of, if you put $20,000 in and you refinance and you only got 10 of it back, well, that was unfortunate, but you still have the 10 you got back, and you need to build your pool again, and then you can do it again, and hopefully you'll have the outcome you want. And so sometimes the rental business can be a little bit more or a lot more forgiving.
Okay. And they're getting a little sneak peek of the Brendan Kelly mentorship here. So, and one more question here from Lacey. He says, if you start off with a mentor helping with the buy and sell process, but you get more comfortable with that and want to switch to buy and hold, can you request a mentor with that expertise? So, yeah, that's certainly something you can, come back to Jumpstart with and say, hey, this mentor is, said they wouldn't be able to help me out with this. Could you look at another one? We'd certainly be able to help you out with that. Brendan, I imagine they're like you would know before, or like it's not going to be too much of a problem if you get through the process and then need to switch gears and ask a little bit of different questions. It's not like buy and sell or buy and hold is the make or break on a mentor or not, right?
That's true. Although some of us, have heavy weight towards one side. Like I've flipped houses before, but I feel relatively strongly about buy and hold. Buy and hold is in my opinion a really great option. But I also think new construction is another great option. The flipping houses can be lucrative, but you end up paying a decent amount in taxes, and it's risky because whatever the outcome is, it's going to be the outcome. And so if you thought you would make a certain amount and you end up making half, you sell it and it just sells for what it sells. In the rental business, sometimes you can push the appraisals that come, and your chances of getting your money back, or at least breaking even on a cash. You figure if you put 20,000 out and you go through the whole process and you refinance and you get $20,000 back, you basically have nothing into it at this point, and whatever you can make on a monthly basis is just an ongoing annuity. And that's that's a beautiful thing if you can make that work that way. And in the flip business, it's a little bit different, but I understand some people really love the idea of doing that, and they're not wrong for loving it. It's just that I think that a mentor who is in that business would be the best option in that case.
Okay. All right, great. And that is all the questions we had. So I think that's a good place to close it out. Brendan, thank you so much again for joining us. I thought it was a really useful discussion, and I'm sure, as people view the recordings or the recording of this and prepare to fill out the mentor application for Jumpstart Germantown, hopefully they'll be a little bit more prepared and have some quality answers for us. Again, just a reminder that that's for the Jumpstart Germantown graduates. We just recently graduated our program. We're going to be sending out the mentor application very soon, and you'll get that and can complete it. And we'll collect all the responses and review them over the next couple weeks, and begin mentor pairing. And maybe you'll have the lucky opportunity to be paired with Brendan. No promises, but I know he is participating in our program moving forward, and we're excited about that, along with plenty of other great mentors, that we've been in contact with, and who are all looking forward to get paired up with you guys. So yeah, I think that's all we got. I just want to real quickly sneak peek of the upcoming JUMPinars. Next Wednesday at 7 p.m., we have Judith Robinson, who is a local Germantown developer and owner of a title agency. She's going to talk about tangled titles. And then and I should say, this is the second version of that topic that we've discussed. Before we had a JUMPinar with an attorney, Joe Consul, and he discussed tangled titles from the attorney and legal side of things. Whereas Judith's going to talk about what she said was unfinished business titles, and titles that might not be technically tangled but just need a little clearing up to make it work. So I'm excited for that next Wednesday at 7. And then you can see our other two JUMPinars. We're going to have one later this month on building contractor relationships, and then in December, financing for bigger projects. So those are coming up, and you can register for them at jumpstartgermantown.com/events. And as Angie said, as responses to many of the questions about whether the recording will be available, yes, it will be available tomorrow at around midday. I'll get the recording up online, and then eventually, hopefully, we'll make an audio-only version that people can listen to, as a podcast. But for quickness purposes, I'll have it up tomorrow as a Zoom call. Yeah, so I think that is everything. Brendan, thank you so much again, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.